Thinking about buying a used car? Well, here are some tips by 00 Crash Test. Safety is always a top factor as cars can be replaced but not humans. Although old cars are cheaper and often have fewer electrical problems, they are usually more dangerous as safety standards were lower in the past. Although you might find one in mint condition, avoid these cars regardless. Number 1. The Chevrolet Cavalier, also sold as the Pontiac Sunfire and Toyota Cavalier in Japan. Of all cars sold after 1990, the Cavalier is probably the most dangerous car. The Cavalier, along with the Dodge Neon, are the only cars that received 3 out of 5 stars in the 1995 NHTSA full frontal crash test, which was done at 35 miles per hour. In other words, they were tied as the worst performers in that test. Even the Geo Metro, which was known to be unsafe, scored a higher 4 out of 5 stars. However, what distinguishes the Cavalier from the Neon as the most dangerous car is the IIHS. Both cars scored the same overall poor in the frontal moderate overlap test, then known as the frontal offset test, done at 40 miles per hour. The Geo Metro was not tested. However, the Cavalier scored significantly lower in the sub-ratings. The Cavalier had 3 poor sub-ratings compared to the Neon's 2. The Cavalier was also notorious for being the only vehicle that scored a poor in the frontal offset test after year 2000. If you want a similarly priced car, look at the 1997 to 2000 Honda Civic or the 1998 to 2002 Toyota Corolla, both of which scored acceptable ratings and are more reliable. This brings us to number 2. The Dodge Neon, also sold as the Plymouth Neon and Chrysler Neon in Europe. This only applies to model years 1995 to 1999. The details were previously described. Unlike the Cavalier, which only had a facelift for model year 2003, the Neon had a year 2000 redesign, with a new frame. Hence, it got higher than a poor rating for later model years. This shows that even Chrysler Group had slightly more commitment to safety compared to General Motors. If you want a similarly priced car, look at the 1997 to 2000 Honda Civic or the 1998 to 2002 Toyota Corolla, both of which scored acceptable ratings and are more reliable. Number 3. The Pontiac Transport, also sold as the Chevrolet Venture, Oldsmobile Silhouette, Pontiac Montana, Chevrolet Transport in Europe, Opel Sintra in Europe, Vauxhall Sintra in the UK, Buick GL8 in China, and Buick GL8 First Land in China. The Transport was noted for having the frame collapse the most in the frontal offset test. The A-pillar was bent beyond recognition and the footrest was pushed back a scary 19 inches. The dummy was crushed and had to be disassembled to be taken out. If that were a real person, he or she would have been crushed. That would mean instant painless death. Unlike the previous vehicles, it was also tested by the Euro NCAP using the Opel Sintra, in which it had the same frightening results. Though the structure had collapsed less in the Cavalier is smaller, which means that in the event of a head-on collision, the Cavalier's frame would collapse more than that of the Transport. Of course, this does not apply to all smaller cars. It was because the Cavalier's frame had already collapsed significantly in the test. If you want a similarly priced car, look at the 1998 to 2003 Toyota Sienna, which earned the highest rating of good and was the best performer of all cars. Number 4. The Daewoo Leganza, also sold as the Doninvest Condor in Russia. Daewoo was part of General Motors when the Leganza was sold. Like the Transport, the structure collapsed dramatically and got an overall poor rating. It was the only sedan after 1997 that had a frame collapse comparable to that of the Transport. Unlike the previous cars, it was also tested by the ANCAP, with the same appalling results. If you want a similarly priced car, look at the 1998 to 2001 Toyota Camry, which received the top rating of good. Number 5. The Chevrolet Blazer, also sold as the GMC Jimmy, Oldsmobile Bravada, Chevrolet Trailblazer, GMC Envoy, and Opel Blazer in Europe. The Blazer received a poor rating in the IIHS frontal offset test. According to the IIHS, the Blazer also had the highest driver death rate of all cars in the US for model years 2001 to 2004. Please note that this does not apply to the Bravada, Trailblazer, or Envoy for model years 2002 to 2004, as they were already using a new platform. If you want a similarly priced car, look at the 1996 to 2002 Toyota 4Runner, also sold as the Toyota Hilux Surf in Japan and Zhongxing Admiral in China. Number 6. The Chevrolet Astro, also sold as the GMC Safari. Though the Astro did just as poorly in the crash test as the Blazer, it had a much lower driver death rate. In fact, the Astro had one of the lowest death rates of all cars in the US. What puts it on this list is that the frame around the back seat bent, which means that even they could have significant leg injuries. The Astro is the only vehicle in which backseat passengers have a high risk of significant injuries in a frontal moderate overlap collision at a reasonable speed. If you want a similarly priced car, look at the 1998 to 2003 Toyota Sienna, which earned the highest rating of good and was the best performer of all cars. We can clearly conclude that General Motors did not prioritize safety. It is appalling how 5 of the 6 most unsafe vehicles on the road are General Motors products. After all, criticism is necessary in order for things to improve. This is how car safety has improved dramatically in just 20 years. Fortunately, today, General Motors cars are no longer dangerous and do acceptably in crash tests. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe and turn on notifications.